issues that you've worked on that you feel particularly close to, or that have marked your experience here?
As a journalist or in general?
Well, working through these years at Kosovo 2.0 in general, as a journalist and as a project and program manager.
Of course, the sex edition was really defining work that I really loved doing, not only because it was the first time that I had come here and worked for the first time with an editorial team like this one, but also because of the issues that I was dealing with. I've been always very interested in sexuality, feminism, and all sorts of issues related to gender and politics. But also migration has been an issue that has interested me for a long time. And when I was working on the migration magazine, I wrote a story about a Spanish man who was marrying a Kosovar woman. And this, of course, I was relating to this story a lot because I am in a particular situation in which I have a partner who cannot visit my country because of visas, and visas are not given, not even as a tourist or not even as a scientific visiting world fair of scientists. There's no visas at all. So it was an issue that I was very close to, and through the migration magazine as well, I put that story there, which was pretty unique. Not mine, it was a different two people. But also migration is an issue that I find very close to myself, perhaps because I moved as well, and I am a migrant in a way. I am a migrant, not in a way, but full way. But also because I think it's really changing our societies a lot, and of course it's a very current issue, so working into that magazine was really particularly as well challenging. As a journalist, I have not only written some of the stories not only have I written the stories, sometimes we worked as an editorial team, so many stories come across in brainstorming meetings, so it's really challenging sometimes, not because of what you are doing, but because of what you have to take upon the challenge of creating the whole magazine with a team of people with different perspectives as well. So it's a lot of discussions, and each of those brainstormings is a learning process in itself. But then I started working more, perhaps covering art. Somehow I started covering more and more art, cultural issues. Maybe because I really love doing interviews, and somehow it became, it was needed as well for the type of content that we were having at the time, but also maybe it was easier sometimes because there was really interesting artists visiting and it was really interesting to interview them. But I have never had a real knowledge of the arts. I do have a real interest in people. So I guess that has, having the chance to interview a lot of different interesting people was also really, I loved it. I really felt in my medium, you know, when you get to interview. I interviewed interesting musicians like Ian Venenius, who is a rock and roller guy, and also artists like Alfredo Jar, people who have done history in their own lives. So I suppose I'm always more interested about what's the human behind the achievement than the achievement itself, even though are both incredibly interesting. But I had the opportunity to do some really to have interesting conversations with interesting people. So, and then when I entered more the field of the project coordination and management, it happened naturally because I was really keen into doing more and more things. How can we do more and more, reach more and more people, but also more creatively? And some things I'm really happy about are perhaps it's that we have managed to grow into different levels, and this, for example, now we're doing these small talks, which we're trying to bring people who are interested in an issue, but also trying to bring local politicians as well who are working on that field, so that we bring people together, but not in a conference room in some hotel where nobody's gonna go to that thing, but in some open space or really central place where everybody can come and feel engaged. We're eliminating this whole structure of panel versus audience, where there's 5 people talking to an audience, and then by the end, after an hour of talking, they get to ask questions. No, not even questions. Why? You don't come here to ask questions to the experts. You come here to talk. You have ideas how to solve this issue. This is a forum where you are welcome, not only to solve problems, but as well to share thoughts or something that is going to hopefully bring us forward to. And we've done different topics, from public spaces and the reuse of public spaces to migration as well, and other topics. A long list right now, because we started doing this like a couple of years ago, and it's been working well. And then we also have done a few campaigns. Last one has been one that we're proud of. It was called I Want to Know, in Albanian Po du me dit. So one of these advocacy projects that I like to work on was the campaign we launched last year. It was called I Want to Know, in Albanian Po du me dit, and it encouraged through a video, but also through other offline actions to it encouraged citizens to use social media, and particularly the hashtag I Want to Know, to ask questions and demand information to public institutions, representatives of public institutions, politicians in general. And it didn't get perhaps the answers from them that we were hoping. We didn't expect to get lots of them, but I think it really had a bit of an impact into raising awareness about the need of, as citizens, feel more engaged into demanding information and into exercising the right to information, and perhaps in a way also to share this thought that as citizens we also have a responsibility if we want to take it. Not that it's a must, because of course everybody is dealing with lots of different issues in their lives, but it can come with something good if we all come together to put pressure on institutions that are not listening to us always. So that was a creative project. It was an advocacy campaign, which it also contributed to our understanding of what do people want to know about. And in a time that there was a lot of discussion about the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia, these kind of narratives that are very prevalent on the media and that always very present in public discussion, actually were not so present in the questions that citizens had or the demands that citizens had. They had interest in learning what's going to happen to public services, how are they going to get developed, how is the health system going to get developed, how is the trash pickup system going to get developed, how are minority rights protected in schools, how are women's rights protected, particularly violence within the family, how is that going to be fought. so it was also enlightening for us to see this response, and we try to use that in our editorial work as well, and to implement this knowledge that we got and the questions from citizens into the work that we do every day. So I like the fact that I am a journalist, and I worked right now into thinking of activities and actions that can help us move forward with new conversations. Perhaps because I have been a journalist before, I understand, or I want to think that I understand how, as a media organization, we can create different spots of conversation or trigger new issues to be discussed in different ways, more creative, perhaps more engaging, still with the same values of journalism. So that's a big change, perhaps, for the very initial classic journalism and media approach with which I started. But I think it has complemented each other in the end, and I hope it will continue to be that way.
So how does it feel to be an activist in an environment that is not where you're from?
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure if I identify as an activist. I do, but in a way I feel like as a journalist you are somehow partly an activist because you are doing a public service, and I understand it as such. At the same time, I am a foreigner. I am an expat. For the majority of people that see my name written somewhere and don't know who I am. And I always find that issue very challenging, and I think a lot about it. Because even though I have lived here, now it's been 5 years, I have learned the language enough to have conversations. I was recently interviewed. I felt very proud I managed to have a whole interview in Albanian, and I have learned. I have all my friends are from here, most of them. My partner is from here. I've gone through lots of experiences with him as part of the life that we do here, and his family, and I am here, I live here, and I don't see myself as an expat or as a foreigner. I always find the word expat charged and loaded with status and privileges in a way, because somehow when you are an expat, you are someone who came from abroad and who didn't really integrate for some reason. And I find that it also, especially here in Kosovo, where there is such a big international community very attached to certain institutions, it is always very connected as well to the work of those institutions. I often get asked here, do you work in ULEX or do you work in KIFOR? It's either one or the other. They never think that I might work in a civil society organization, or, I mean, still civil society is maybe the third or fourth option that people think for a foreigner, but they often think that you're working for some institution such as ULEX or KIFOR or the EU or something, one of the big ones. And that also comes with ideology, because these institutions have policies or have implemented a work here that had some consequences or not, and did or not fulfill the expectations of society here. So, coming back to how I feel here when being a foreigner, and whether I, as an activist or journalist, feel how I feel here, I always feel that I must be careful because I'm not seen as a person from here. So, by the majority who doesn't know me, the people who know me treat me as one more someone who understands what they are talking about, not only in terms of language, but also culturally and how things work here. But if I were back home, I think I will be way more active. I think I will be way more having some sort of independent initiative, not only through my organization, but also as myself, trying, I don't know, there is a space here in my neighborhood which I always think it will be a great space to have neighbors gatherings every once in a while and talk about the issues that we're worried about. But I always think if a foreigner knocks on their door, telling them, let's talk about the problems that we have, it eventually is going to come for some or for many, or at least that's my thinking, as a patronizing approach. So I don't want to create that approach, and I don't want to push that to be a confrontational. So I have psychoanalyzed all the possible perspectives to how that will be taken. And I always think if people know me, they will understand what I'm trying to do, and they will not see it as a, or I hope they will not see it as something, as a patronizing approach, or as a foreigner trying to tell them how things work because she's a foreigner in her country. Things are different, things work, and she can, no, actually in my country things don't work that well either. But I just, so I feel always that I have to be very careful and understand very well and approach very well each person, of course, and try to connect in a way that it's horizontal as well. And I'm not trying to teach anyone anything. I'm trying to learn myself what's the best way to do things. But if I do it alone, I'm not gonna do any difference. I'm not gonna make any difference. But we help each other. Maybe you help me, I help you, and we move forward. Still, even when I was asked to do this interview, I thought twice about the issue of, oh, but I'm a foreigner, and what are they going to ask me about? Will it be about whatever? I don't know. I wasn't sure. I of course I accepted with gladly. So I can also explain these kind of perspectives in a very extended way. But I think, and I understand this feeling, because it is there. This feeling that foreigners come to teach us how to live, it's there. And it's perfectly justified, because it's happened. It's there, it's in the institutions, it has been institutionalized as well, this approach, this patronizing approach. Sometimes for good reasons, mostly I think in very wrong ways. But what I mean is that I understand this fear or this rejection or this skepticism towards the foreigner coming up with initiatives. But for that reason, I am also trying to carefully be part of everything I do. From the very beginning, I knew I had to learn the language if I wanted to work here, if I wanted to live here. I started very slowly, but from almost the first day after I knew I was going to be here for more than 3 months. And then it just slowly as well with friends and everybody, I learned about the issues they face, and I myself faced issues by living here and being part of life, normal life. So still being a foreigner, I don't like to say of myself that I'm a foreigner. Somehow the word doesn't feel right. I am a foreigner, I'm from another country, but I live here. I'm a resident of Prishtina. I take part in life, I go to events, and if I could, I vote, but that's not allowed yet for residents. So hopefully one day maybe. And I feel like the more I am able as well with the language to be engaged and to show that it's not only the language what makes you engage, but it facilitates the way to take part in, for example, this interview on TV, or I was moderating a debate recently as well. So this kind of exposure as well, it helps to feel yourself as part of the place you are, to also feel more responsible, and it gives you a tool as well to start being more active and use that in a different way. And hopefully I'll get farther with it with time.
So how do you reconcile this idea of the foreigner coming in and imposing their way of doing things, but also the warm welcome that you mentioned that you received when you first got here? How do you think that those two go hand in hand? Or has your experience of being welcome in Kosovo made you maybe understand better this perception and the reasons why a foreigner could be seen as imposing?
Can I think about it? I think culturally, Kosovo society, and I can speak more about the Albanian society here, it's naturally hospitable, and the hospitality is very present, very intricate in the culture, and it goes back to centuries ago. But that has remained, and that's still very, very visible in people. But I think it also can eventually disappear if this trust and this kindness is abused in a way. So I feel like when we have this expression in Spanish, it's like again expression in Spanish, but it's when you give your hand and they take your arm, your full arm. I feel like perhaps this is something that can represent the idea that I have that when you are offered kindness, that doesn't mean that you can abuse it, and that you can take someone's trust in you and abuse all their potential and tell them what to do with their lives, or dictate how they should behave, or how they should behave with you, or I think all relationships must be horizontal, and through that everybody can feel welcome into that relationship, the foreigner and the local. But I think that to reconcile being a foreigner and then this kindness and not being, I suppose that it's what I'm saying. It's don't abuse this kindness, and this kindness is happening because this person is autonomous and knows well what they want, or at least they have an integrity and they understand that that kindness is part of that decency and that integrity that they have. So don't abuse it. Don't behave in a way that they are gonna think that you are undermining their intelligence, or showing them how things are done, because I don't know if what I'm doing or what I've done in my life is the best way of doing things. And of course you have different experiences when you come from abroad, but then you're coming to a place that doesn't work the same way you work, or maybe it does, but get to know it. First, I think that you have to come with this tabula rasa and start from zero, where you don't know the other, they don't know you either, and we can both learn from each other what is it what we're missing, or how can I contribute to what you are doing, and how can you contribute to what I'm doing. And I'm talking about human relations, I'm not talking about state relations or things like that. But I guess that also the political situation of Kosovo and how international community has contributed to state building of Kosovo and Kosovar society. It's also influencing the way you are seen as a person who comes from abroad. I'm from Spain. It's a country that doesn't recognize Kosovo. And I always get asked, when are you going to recognize us? But always with very great kindness, you know. It never comes as bad, or it never comes across as, because people treat you as a person. And so I try to do the same. I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but...
Most definitely. Are you still in touch with the people that first welcomed you in Pjesa?
Well, I am not. I'm not. I mean, I have them all on Facebook and everything. Somehow I felt like I have this approach sometimes to some encounters in life where I feel like they are not meant to repeat, or they are not meant to last, or they are not meant to get extended. They are good. They were short, but they were beautiful. And I, not intentionally, but somehow I never went back to this village. I felt like I was given so much that going back it will also be keep on taking in a way. And I don't know, it just, I would love to go back to it, but I've been also contacted, and we've been in touch, we've written to each other, how are you doing, how is life going? Some left already the town and everything, but I've been somehow in touch. I would love to go back. Perhaps now that I can speak the language and I can communicate with everybody there, it will be a much more enjoyable experience also for them to see that I was not just passing by, but I actually decided to learn as well more. And it was also a language issue in the past because I didn't speak at all Albanian in the first year, so it was a bit difficult to communicate anyhow. But it also goes back to the thought that some things are not meant to repeat, maybe. It's a bit... Of course, it will be great to go back and visit, and it's not like I'm not gonna do it, but somehow I had this thought, like, don't... You know, when you have a painting that it's perfect and you keep doing retouches on it, and in the end you're gonna destroy it or something. Somehow I had a really beautiful experience, and I wanted to conserve it exactly as it happened. But sure, I will eventually, now that I have the ability to speak and communicate, it will be great to go back to it and learn more about it.
Have your parents ever, and your sister, have they ever come to visit you here?
Yeah. No, my parents have never visited. My family never visited. They are not very traveling. I mean, my sister is more traveling, but now she has a daughter. So my father didn't leave the island for years. And myself, I know my mother wants to visit eventually. Hopefully she will. Hopefully she will. But no, they haven't visited. Not for any special reason, but it's more about the logistics. Going to Spain usually takes 3 planes because there's no direct flights between Kosovo and Spain, and also I'm from an island and we need an extra flight often. So it was always a bit complicated to make it happen. But hopefully we will eventually meet in the middle point, or at least here.
And so how often do you go back to Pjesa?
I go back usually until now it's been 2 times a year. I usually travel in July and also in December for Christmas time, but this year I went in April. Try to spend, I always go back home for holidays, so I never get to travel around the region. I haven't been traveling much since, I mean, I traveled a bit in the region, but never with my free time and enjoying and trying to see new things. So this year I'm gonna go to South Albania, and hopefully take the road and see a few more hidden places besides the main ones. Because I always go back home. I go in July, I go in December. That's basically takes all my holiday time of the year. And I cannot not go. You know? I need to go home, have a feel of home and reset the brain a little bit and have a touch base with home a bit. Yeah.
And how do you explain your life here to people back home or even friends who are living elsewhere?
I think it's really hard to explain it because they haven't seen anything, and Pristina is a small place. It's not like a big city, a European capital, that it's like a huge city that, I don't know, somehow has a lot of offer, a lot of places to go, a lot of places to visit. You know, I have sometimes the impression, I became used, now we have water 24 hours, but before we didn't. We had water cuts during the night, after 10, and I got really used to it. It was not an issue. But if I will mention it sometime, just because it happened, like, I don't know, maybe talking on the phone with my family, I have to go because I want to take a shower, because at 10 I'm not going to have water. So I will do it totally unintentionally. But eventually my mother, I think she has an idea that nothing works here. Okay. But I don't know, of course, I guess they have an idea that it's a difficult place to live. Maybe because when you talk to your friends, you tend to explain more the struggles that you're having or the difficulties that exist, and maybe you don't talk so much about the good time that you have, or so. So yeah, maybe they have a harsh idea of Kosovo, but at the same time, I told them a lot about this hospitality aspect of society and how, I don't know, how open people are and how welcoming are the traditions as well. And because often they are curious about how are the traditions, or do you have a Christmas? No, but there is Bayram, and this is what happens then. And like when you explain all these differences, they're curious. But eventually it's also about your life, and depending how your life is, then they also have their own idea of what you are doing there. And I guess they often have, or maybe friends that are journalists as well, they see you as, wow, you're in Kosovo, you're being a journalist. I think they have a bigger idea of what I do than I have. You know, like, well, she's in Kosovo, she must be doing something really incredible or something. You know, just because you are far in a country that had conflictive past, you must be doing some sort of war reporting or something. It also plays a lot with these stereotypes, which I try to deconstruct as much as I can. And of course they are all very mad about the fact that Spain doesn't give visas to Kosovars to travel. And I have talked a lot about this issue to them, so they are very aware about it. And they don't understand it. It comes as such a shock. They often don't know anything about this fact. Nobody knows that Spain doesn't give visas to Kosovars, and nobody understands what that means. What is a visa? Because we became European Union privileged citizens that travel without visas, just with a passport, and the sole idea of going to an embassy with your whole life documentation to ask for permission to travel, it's out of their minds. So it's something that I talk a lot about, and yeah, perhaps that contributes to that image of Kosovo doesn't work, you know. But it has its issues, but of course, as every society, hopefully we will overcome these struggles.
Well, thank thank you so much. I think I've asked all of the questions that I wanted to ask. I don't know if you want to add anything else or just revise any of your thoughts. Feel free to.
No, I also think I went through everything.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sorry if I got very extended in some of these issues.
Lovely to hear your life story. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, actually, you made me talk about every single thing.
Well, that probably means that I did a good job, but I don't know.
Yeah. I hope you understood everything, and